I think they were both the same question. But,
Excellent.
Anyway, my question really was at what point would you introduce the whole issue of the macro and microcosmic orbit? Would you say that's really a pretty advanced level piece of information? And also, can you go into it a little bit, because I've never totally grasped it.
Excellent.
Well, that's a good reason not to be teaching it.
That's not why I do it.
It's been a while since he's made a particularly big deal about it one way or the other in the Marriage of Heaven and Earth, but I would say I've always, I'll back up for a minute. When in Denver, he used to teach, his method, what he was teaching and the way he was teaching. Some of it was before he spent a lot of time with the Yohun Jay, so it was a little more fire method oriented. It was a little more based on some of what he'd learned in Taiwan, and he did teach the macrocosmic orbit in the context of standing, and he didn't teach what we would now call spiraling energy body, but to some extent it was similar. And so I had an exposure to that early on, and I would not myself probably really think about even teaching any of the microcosmic orbit or the macrocosmic orbit in the Marriage of Heaven and Earth unless some people really had some serious practice and had some exposure to spiraling where they were beginning to move energy up and down the body in a way that's different than, activating the inner yang meridians and or working with moving the energy the way you do in Dragon and Tiger. In the first movement is a macrocosmic orbit move, and the second movement is a microcosmic orbit move, but it's a fairly advanced part of the exercise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've noticed, and Don was saying this too about, it's a concept that his acupuncture students understand, and I certainly know that people who come in with other exposure to Qigong, it's a fairly familiar, for the people who know about Qigong, it's common for them to have some kind of experience with it. So it is useful when you can kind of relate systems, even though they're distinct systems, kind of relate from one to the other like that.
Yeah, I mean, the way he's taught, at least in the first move, the lengthening or getting movement on the yin or the yang meridians of the body, which is often really sort of dealing with gross surfaces like the inside of the legs or the outside of the legs, the inside of the arms, the outside of the arms. There's an aspect of the macrocosmic orbit that isn't much different than bringing things up the body one way and sending them down the other, and bringing them from the feet out to the hands and up to the top of the head, and then back in, down the front, and down to the floor. And so learning to get some movement in the yin and yang meridians is a good foundation for playing with that and beginning to get some sense of it, particularly if you don't have much exposure to spiraling. But then the microcosmic orbit, the way it's done in Heaven and Earth, it doesn't fit those things because you're bringing energy up the spine while you're bringing everything else into the center. So it's one of those you're doing one thing one way and another thing another way, which is what happens in some of these Qigong sets when you're trying to do or when it's possible to do 3 or 4 or 5 or more different things at once. So the meridian stuff is useful for beginning to get the flow of it, but it doesn't always match up.
Got it. Great. Okay. Well, just take a second and ping me real quick if there's anything else you want to cover. Otherwise, I think we've done a nice good job today. And if anybody's still listening to this recording at this point, they can consider that their Qigong practice for the day. So thank you guys. Thanks for joining me again today. And if this works out, if this comes out nicely and people find it a useful tool, I'm looking forward to doing stuff like this more in the future. So thanks again, and I will talk to you soon.